of Sadiq as the trade representative for the United States. And the Sadiq worked for a chemical company. He was vice president of a chemical company that promotes GM products. And the chemical company, when Michelle Obama decided to put in an organic garden, the chemical company that Sadiq worked for criticized her roundly for putting in an organic garden, saying that their genetically modified crops were just as good.
It's really devilish, isn't it? Once the EPA in December turned carbon into a toxin, I was done with them. Once I saw them allow toxic chemicals in the Gulf Coast, I was done with them. I don't trust them anymore. I don't.
Well, they knew about Corexit for a long time, and they're withholding information about the toxicity of Corexit. And when they first put a press release out earlier to demand that BP stop using it, well, they wouldn't have done that if they knew that it was, safe, essentially. So then BP just proceeded to ignore them. They're not even testing the food for Corexit. They could do that. But they're not testing the food supply, fish food supply coming out of the Gulf for Corexit. They've got some fly-by-night company that's been in existence 1 year that's training people to smell the food to make sure it's safe. That was on the Rachel Maddow show. And I was upset because they never investigated this company to realize that this company was funded by Kellogg, and the only claim to fame and its existence was just as a food, giving food classes, university food classes or something. It's a nonprofit organization. So instead of having the USDA, which is qualified to do food testing and test food all the time, to put the USDA in the Gulf and say, look, we're going to do the chemical testing, we're going to test for Corexit and all this, they decided that the smell test would be sufficient.
That's absurd.
And it's a smell test only for oil, not for any chemicals. And how can you tell if the interior of the fish is contaminated or not? You wouldn't know unless you cut them. So, and then test it. And they say, well, we can't test. Well, they certainly can test for toxic chemicals. They certainly can. They've been doing it for years. And when they said, well, there was something about, well, we can devise some tests in about 10 years. And I thought, well, that's too late. So I don't believe them. And I don't believe that the Corexit is safe.
I don't think anybody does.
Possible.
I don't think anybody does. There's a lot of people getting sick in the Gulf. Lots of people that we never hear from.
Yes. Well, they're told that they'll lose their jobs, or the press is kept out of it. Even now, the oil cleanup of birds and everything is all being taken over by private agencies, so that you're not going to see anything. And they don't want people in the Gulf filming. They take the press on the tours, but then they only take the press to what they want them to see. So that's problematic as well. But I'm going to drop back to the bees here.
Actually, I was going to just ask you to go back to the bees. Talk to us about the bees, because people are very worried all over the world. What is happening to the bees?
Well, we're losing, even this year, we're losing bee populations all the time. And the exposure to the toxic chemicals in herbicides, pesticides, and insecticides, and also the genetically modified foods are definitely taking a toll. And see, where other countries are starting to ban these chemicals and insecticides that are being used on crops because they know that it may impact the bees, and they've seen the labels which says that it is harmful to the bees. The United States, because we're so beholden to university grants from the chemical companies, and we're in with the chemical manufacturers, are refusing to take these products off the market, even though we know that these products are toxic to honeybees. And so the neonicotinoids are really bad. I can tell you that a lot of bee growers are right now not taking, or our beekeepers are not taking their bees into certain areas where certain types of genetically modified foods are grown. They're beginning to refuse to take their bees into areas where certain types of insecticides are used, feeling that their hives tend to survive better without being in those areas. So it's going to mean a drop in food production very quickly because the native pollinators are being hit, like the bumblebees and others as well. Birds are being affected. So there's a whole drop-off in the whole range of pollinators.
I have to tell you something very serendipitous that happened yesterday. After we first spoke, I have a colleague of mine who has kind of like a visiting zoo with all kinds of animals and birds and everything. It's called Zoo Mars. And she was sharing with me yesterday that she had this big swarm of bees that just arrived. So she called a group to come and take the bees, okay? So they came over and they said to her, for $300, we'll move the bees. For $75, we'll kill them right here. And I thought that was very interesting that this came up as you and I were talking about bees and the oceans and the atmosphere, that she would share this with me. And I said, I'm going to interview a beekeeper. I said, I have a guest that's going to bring in a beekeeper so we could talk and learn more about bees, what their care is about, what they need, and what's happening. But I thought that was very interesting. That's a whole other context for motivation.
What I would have told her immediately is to see if she could raise the $300 immediately so that they could turn it into a hive for her, which would pollinate everything in the area. And they could have, for $300, they could have put the bees in a hive, not just move them, but put them into a hive, and that she could have had fresh honey, marketed honey. She could have done all kinds of things with those bees.
Well, I'll tell her.
So instead of killing them...
She didn't kill them. She didn't elect to kill them at all, but that's what she was saying to me. She says, what kind of motivation is that for people? $300 to move them and $75 to kill them. I mean, what are most people going to do psychologically? It's just terrible.
She needs to talk to a beekeeper in the local area, get a hold of one. She can call there's a beekeeping federation, and she can contact them, and they can send someone in who would probably save that group of bees, and she could set up a hive or two on her property, and she could sell honey. She could it's wonderful. It's not that intensive. The bees do most of the work, and then you take out some of the honey, and you've got this natural honey. It could be a teaching experience for youngsters.
Oh, yeah, and kids and families go to Zoo Mars, and they love it. It's an incredible place in San Juan Capistrano.
Well, then this would be perfect.
I'm going to tell her.
So if you have anyone listening to the show who would like to donate, to saving these bees, $10, if everyone contributed $10, $20, you'd have the money right away to have hives there. Then you can take your children to go see beehives in operation. They're wonderful.
That would be awesome. I'm going to tell her. I'm going to play her this. That's really cool. But I wanted to tell you that just serendipitously came up. Very, very interesting. I love all animals, plants, beings, the oceans. I'm an environmental lover. I don't agree with what's happening with the global agenda on climate change, and I think that after doing 15 shows and over 200 hours of dedicated research, I'm not on board this agenda at all, and I feel the public has been hoodwinked. But I am a full advocate and lover of the environment, and I'll do anything I can to help the planet.
That's why I do this too. But I wanted to say that I saw Senator Harry Reid on the news.
Yes.
He did a press conference about their energy climate bill, which they said temporarily doesn't have the votes, which is perfectly fine with me at the moment because did you know that there was a historic vote on June? It was June 10th. Of this year. There was a historic Senate vote, and I want to talk about why that's important.
Okay.
The EPA, under a Supreme Court decision in 2007, could regulate and reduce all greenhouse gases. Now, this is methane from waste dump sites. This is all kinds of different things. And they've been regulating automobile exhaust emissions and different things for years. Senator Murkowski put forward a Resolution 26 in which he was going to stop the EPA from regulating any greenhouse gases, ever. The U.S. Senate, led by Senator Boxer, in a 53-47 vote, defeated this Murkowski's resolution.